Welcome to the podcast of the impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and when speaking about my guest today, Baltimore Fishbowl said he's, quote, part of a new wave of performers shifting the paradigm of the modern magician. Holy smokes. Give it up for the one, the only Joel DeWyer. Who wrote that hogwash? Shifting the... All right, tell me, what is that all about? How do you picture that, shifting the paradigm, modern magician stuff?
Well, I mean, we've had conversations about, when you pull an audience, if we were to pull our audiences at the start of every show and say, how many of you have seen a magician live? Very few hands would go up. And so one assumption you're tempted to make a lot as a magician is that most people's experience with magic is like their weird uncle pulling weird things out of their ear or doing really corny jokes, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that with the likes of Derek Delgadio, David Copperfield with his vignettes, he's always sort of been this storyteller, this dramatic presenter. Mm-hmm. Magic can be so much more than like eye candy on Instagram or a really bad, story about this or that for patter for an effect. Like you can really take audience members on a journey. I mean, I think sometimes the popcorn or the candy, the bubblegum for the eyes is really good too, mm-hmm. in certain performing venues or performing styles like strolling, for example. But when you're doing a parlor act, like you can go so many different directions, and it doesn't have to be. And now for my next trick,
right.
There can be this idea of a through thread from start to finish that links with your character, and audience members feel like maybe they saw something more like a movie or a dinner theater performance that included magic than just a magic show, which I think is interesting. Yeah. And I think pushes the envelope for our craft and for the experience of our craft for audience members. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, no, I think, and I mean, obviously I'm just poking fun at you from knowing full well that I am not the intended audience of that sentence. Like the point is, my frame of reference is drastically different from the average person who's looking to invite a magician to a private party in downtown Baltimore. And so what is important for them to know about you is that you are not a kids show performer. And you are not doing the lame uncle jokes, that what you're doing is
anymore.
Yeah. Now that you've gone pro, you're making sure that the experience that they're having is as elevated as the caterer and as the venue and all that stuff. Like as opposed to bringing in somebody who, again, would show up is coming straight from a birthday party from earlier that day,
Yeah, and that's not to dog on family or children's party magicians. Sure. That is a perfect and great outlet, and mm-hmm. You can certainly do a lot of business and do a lot of entertaining in that venue. I did that a lot when I was younger, and as I got older, this a little bit because mm-hmm. you also there was a many-year hiatus for me in magic when I was in undergraduate and grad school, and I decided to come back into it again later in life. And I just decided for myself that I didn't want to go back to doing those kinds of shows because I wanted to explore something else, not because I didn't like it necessarily, just a new era for me as I explored my place in this craft and art form.
Yeah, well, and actually, this would be good to sort of chat about this difference in scale of what we both do. And one of the things that I like about your material is you do what I would call parlor magic, maybe platform. And if we want to define some terms here, close-up magic is pretty much universally seen as either, you're 3 feet away, right? So whether you're seated at a table and there are people sitting at the table with you, or you're walking around strolling at a party, both of those would be considered close-up magic. And then on the other end of the spectrum is stage magic, whether it's large box illusions or, something big enough that can be seen by 1,000 people, right? But then there's this sort of whole weird gray area where I would say Parlor is sort of good for a group of 50 people, like a large living room type thing. And then
Hmm.
Platform might be more what you'd think of a classic like nightclub or comedy club sort of a
Hmm.
thing where there's a couple hundred. It's probably not 1,000 people, but it's a couple hundred folks, but you're still kind of like in the thick of it. And I feel
Hmm.
like most of the stuff that you present, you get a lot of bang for your buck out of the routines because you are sort of you're right there in that parlor sweet spot where you can
Hmm.
you can do a certain routine for just a few people and it still is great and looks awesome, or you can scale it up in terms of just
Hmm.
how you present it and you can still do it for a room full of 50 people. Do you want to talk
Hmm.
about, do you even know how you ended up doing that? How organic or purposeful was that?
Well, I mean, you had a big part in that, right? I sort of interviewed you many years ago when I decided to sort of reboot my magic career,
Hmm.
and talked about how I didn't want to be a collector of magic tricks anymore, which is a very easy trap to fall into as a magician because you walk into a magic shop and now you can walk into a magic shop any day from your computer.
Yeah.
And you just think to yourself, I must have that. I didn't want to be that anymore. I wanted, and you helped me sort of understand what you want to aim for is sort of not, maybe narrow is not the right word, but a very deliberate repertoire that
Hmm.
you can perform everywhere,
Right. Right.
and you don't have to know a lot of stuff and you don't have to haul a lot of stuff, and you'll get a lot of mileage out of it, and then you can mix it up after a few years.
Right.
And so that's sort of conversing with you sort of helped me understand that. And then it was just like we talked about previously, um, close up magic has always sort of appealed to me more than some of the apparatus stuff. I had a lot of great apparatus stuff when I was a young performer in like high school. A lot of my dad's old stuff, some of my own new stuff.
Mm.
But I mean, most of my audience in undergrad was, walking around to house parties and just performing for my college peers,
Right.
like in a strolling setting. And so that's where most of my practice came from. And so, I always sort of look at the parlor venue or style as sort of like the sweet spot. If
Hmm.
you if you can do it, um, if you can do it in parlor, you can probably do it close up, and you can probably do it on a platform. Maybe not every instance, but
Sure.
design and show for parlor, you can bring a lot of that stuff from close up into it. And like you described, a parlor situation oftentimes is like 50 or 60 people.
Hmm.
Staniforth can do sort of a well-known magician in the magic community for sure, but
Uh,
someone for the audience I think to look up because he's a great performer too. He does arguably an entire close-up show from a stage sometimes,
right.
um,
Right.
you know, thread and some other great effects. And he has figured out a way to make it play up and out as opposed to down, an audience looking down on your hand. So like in my parlor show or even on a platform, like, I'll do a lottery ticket prediction. I'll do a torn and restored card piece by piece,
Hmm.
uh, which, it's hard to see in some ways, but you can see it happening even if you're 4, 5, 6 rows back in a large sort of meeting room space or a private dining space. Um, yeah, and so it's enabled me to keep a really narrow, sort of deliberate repertoire for a long time.
Yeah. No, I think well, and like you say, and sort of part of it comes from a conscious choice of picking material, but then also it comes from just where you find yourself performing. Like I know sort of your niche, what you love doing the most is that private house party show. So
Hmm.
not necessarily walking around going from group to group doing one or two quick things, but also not a like we're going to buy a ticket to come see a fully, I mean, an evening show and you're going to do a full, like, yeah, a stage thing. It
Hmm.
sort of is someone's having a house party and they want to do something cool and different. And so then you
Hmm.
show up and it has sort of, I believe John Armstrong
Hmm.
said that close up magic is a conversation and stage
Hmm.
magic is a presentation.
Hmm.
And I like thinking about that. But then what's funny about parlor is I'm like, all right, so what about that middle ground? Like where? But I think hopefully you get to play with a little bit of both, right? Like you can
It's a
have that.
conversation within the presentation.
Yeah, I think yeah, you hopefully the best of both worlds where people
Hmm.
can still interact with you, but at the same time they feel good about that you know where you're headed and you've got a plan. You're not just up there jazzing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, often I've told people often my approach to magic is more. I like to think of it this way. I hope
Mhm.
they experience it this way. Is more about relationship than it is about, like John Armstrong said, presentation.
Yeah.
I lean
Yeah.
into the relationship real hard in my shows,
Yeah. Okay.
whether it's asking for volunteers to help me with something, sharing a little bit about themselves, using personal information in a safe and sort of clever way to create a magical moment.
Mhm.
And like also trying to tap into their heartstrings a little bit where I can, where it's not cheesy to do so,
Sure.
because like that is always going to heighten the experience of the performance, or the conversation for an audience. Whereas sometimes, you can go to a theater or a stage performance, there is that fourth wall. You're always a little bit more separate from the interaction than you could be. And
Right.
so I think that's something I try to take advantage of, because I should. Like, I have the ability to do that in what I do. And so whether it's in someone's private home around a dinner table, or something larger, a private party at a private dining space like Matthew 1600,
Right.
it's always gonna be about that connection. I want them to feel like they know me, and I want to feel like I know them. Like we shared something really incredible together that,
Mhm.
was unique to that time. Maybe that's, I don't know, too aspirational.
No, I
What
think
do
no,
you
I
think?
think that makes sense. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
you
Okay.
and people are always going to care more about themselves than a playing card they just randomly picked, right? And not only that, the more we can remind them that this is not a recorded video that you're watching and can pause at any moment. This is an interactive art form where we're all in the room together, and so your our interaction may change the course of what ends up happening. I think anytime
Mhm.
you can put those little reminders in there is going to make it better for everyone. It keeps you present in the moment. You don't get stuck in autopilot, and also that reminds them that, oh yeah, he's doing this here tonight for us right now.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I guess it is funny how for whatever reason in the stuff that I've ended up doing, I kind of have the strolling stuff. I guess what I'm curious about chatting about is the sort of
Mm.
in terms of strolling. I find that an ideal strolling, in particular, like I walking around at a party type of a thing. Those
Mhm.
routines of mine are short and impactful, and I have the ability to do a longer version of it. But because I don't have a captive audience and because they probably didn't know I was going to be there, I kind of want to get in, do something amazing, and have the ability to get out quickly if it's not jiving.
Always quickly if it's not working. Yes.
Yes, yes. But so I'm just curious how you. So therefore, the stuff that I present on stage is very different from the stuff that I'll
Mhm.
do walking around at a party. I don't think that's
Mhm.
quite as much of a divide for you. So I'm sort of curious if you've noticed
Mm.
how do you change a routine's timing, whether
Yeah.
it's up close or whether it's in a parlor situation.
I mean, I pretty much do the 4-year-old version of my close-up stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, I just keep it straight. I mean, I do have some stuff that I really only do in strolling settings because it's what you described. It's
Yeah.
quick, it's impactful. It drops the jaw, invites you in to stay a little bit longer. Maybe do something where you can ask for a little bit more of their time and attention.
Sure.
But honestly, like I take away all the dramatics, all the storytelling, all the feeling, and I just sort of say, I want to show you something really cool. If you help me out with this and you like it, maybe I'll show you something else that's equally or better.
Cool.
And so, yeah, keeping it simple and straightforward because you need, like you described, like the, more often than not in those social situations, whether it's at a wedding and they're seated around a table, or it's at like a cocktail party and they're on high top tables, like 4 or 6 at a time, like they're doing something else. You are interrupting them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so like it's hard to like inject yourself into that situation politely, and
Mhm.
if they're keen on it, you do your business and move on real quick. So
Yeah.
you can't get into the long storytelling,
No, it's a tough. I mean,
and
and
that's
and
fine. I don't like it as much, but it's fine.
yeah. Well, it's the only thing that my favorite part about those gigs is that I have a secret, that they don't know, and that is I am better than they think I'm going to be. And that is not
That's good.
always true at a stage show, like especially if it's a show where somebody has I mean, even just knowing your name, somebody might have looked you up and they've seen they looked at your website or they looked at some videos, and like, I don't know if I can live up to the expectations of someone who is coming to, especially if they've paid good money. I mean, if they've bought a ticket to come see, a show where I'm on the bill, like that's a lot more pressure than I'm just some random guy walking up to him at a cocktail party. It's sort of like, I kind of want to get to that. Like, the reason I want to get in quickly is because I want to get to a punchline as soon as I can, because usually the reaction is like, oh wow, that was really good. Like, and I don't take it personally, that like, yeah, you thought that was going to be crap, didn't you? I totally, yeah, that's fine. But now we're here. Now would you like to see something else? So I'm sure that the same is true for you in terms of people like, oh, okay, what is this guy? He's going to start dealing out 3 rows of cards and,
Yeah. So for the listeners who like want to get inside the mind of one magician, in this case, me, like, so I'm an introvert, like on a massive scale. People often guess the opposite, because when you see me performing, I come across very charismatic and extroverted. Even at my day job, I get the same feedback.
Yeah.
But like, a strolling situation is like a lucid nightmare for me because I am literally like just inserting myself into cool kids groups and trying to be cooler than they are.
Yeah.
And it's, more often than not, almost in every instance, I have really positive experience from the strolling gigs I get hired to do it.
Sure.
I've done a few breweries, which has been fun. But yeah, I mean, if you're an extroverted, outgoing person, you'll eat that stuff up. But for me, it's like, oh God, for 2 hours, I have to be full form extrovert.
Yeah. No, I don't. I guess I'm an extrovert. It varies by situation, right? I mean, I'm sure that's true for everyone, but like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not chatting with everyone who I come across, and whereas I know people who do, I kind of want to just go about my business and yeah. But it is funny, like I do find it is weird to, after a strolling gig, I appreciate the car drive home, because I kind of have to come down from being the like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, like I'm being on, whatever that actually means. I definitely feel
I did a strolling gig for the Hysteria Brewing Company's like second anniversary party, and it was 3 hours. They booked me for an extra hour. And I remember as I was packing, I kept my close-up bag and my stuff in the back corner behind the bar. And I remember as I was packing up, leaving at the end, like, what just happened? Did I black out for the last 3 hours? Was that okay? Sure. Was I good? And then the car ride home, like you say, you just decompress. You're like, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Really good. As an introvert, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. No, it's. And we did a few virtual things together, but I did find that was one of the strangest, the unexpected part of doing virtual shows was, I didn't realize how much I wanted that decompression time of packing up my stuff and either driving home or chatting with you guys after a show. There were plenty of times where, I said goodbye to everyone. The meeting ended at 5:50, and then I'm upstairs 10 minutes later eating dinner, because I didn't have to clean up stuff. I just kept it here, set up in the parlor, and I barely had to change. But it felt like hitting a brick wall, and so I don't know how much. I mean, I know you did some things. Again, we did some stuff together, but did you experience that kind of whiplash as well, or were you able to sort of ease into it a little bit better?
Yeah. I think those situations were very, very different. Yeah, there was a lot less coming down from the performance. Like a live audience for me shares a lot of energy, and I think that's what I'm coming down off of after a live performance.
True. Right.
Now, even though our virtual show was live, you weren't leaving a group at the end of it. In the same way that you do when you're doing a private show or a theater show or whatever. So the adjustment for me was, it was like leaving any other WebEx or Zoom meeting.
Yeah, true.
During the day, it's like, okay, what's next?
Yep.
You know?
Yeah,
Like,
sure. No, it's true. Yeah, you're not. It was definitely harder to. There was less enthusiasm to feed off of, just because you weren't. But not only, I mean, even events where most of the people were unmuted, they're still. I mean, it's a lot like, I'm sure you've done some events before where people are spread out, whether they're at 8 top tables or it's a larger theater and not everyone is crammed together. But that always limits the reaction, because everyone, what might be 10 different chuckles that happen when you deliver a line, if those 10 people were all sitting right next to each other in a theater row, that would get a proper laugh, because it kind of, and so I assume that virtual is
herd
kind of
mentality
like that.
feeds off itself. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And that was definitely the hardest, coming out of COVID. And I was very happy to be back in the same room with people, but the reactions still weren't there yet, because folks were distanced and in their own little groups and all that stuff, So it's, but now we all have, we know how to do that. So when the next, pandemic comes along, then we'll just.
Are you still doing virtual shows a little bit, even on the side?
Not, I mean, I'm not, I don't know when or if I will take it off of my menu of offerings. There's no harm in saying that I still offer them, because I not only can, but again, lots of cool material that for whatever reason I wasn't able to do out in the world, either methodologically or because of a sense of scale, that I was able to do in virtual shows. So it is kind of fun to keep those around, but I've been doing, exponentially fewer and fewer.
That's good.
And
isn't it good, because it's nice to be in spaces with live audiences. Again, that's, I think, mostly what people want to experience as an audience.
Yeah. And I think
not that virtual is bad.
Sure. And so much more visceral with both my stuff and your stuff. You want it to be in their hands, or they're holding a prop or whatever that might be, Well,
somehow the camera moments from a screen full of faces isn't the same as a camera moment when somebody's mind is blown by your light bulbs, right?
Oh yeah. No, there's, I mean, and I feel like everyone is overacting. Like I appreciate it, but like it's weird as an audience member. I've been on the other side of the Zoom magic show, and you're sort of like, how do I, like, when you're just sitting back watching TV, rarely are you on the edge of your seat and laughing out loud. You're watching TV. It's a one-way medium. So all of a sudden to have it be this funky hybrid where we're not exactly in the room together, but you can still see me if you look at the group view, and So very
go see live entertainment, everybody. Go see live entertainment.
That sounds good. Well, if you want to see Joel's live entertainment coming to your event or something, you can head on over to joeldeweyermagic.com. That is going to do it for this episode of the Podcast of the Impossible. But I want to thank my guest, Joel DeWyer. And for my public shows, social media, special projects, and more, you can head on over to oftheimpossible.com. I'm Peter Wood. Thanks.